Welcome back to Bev Bois, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. As of now, I'm Brian,
I'm Christian.
and today we have Alex Brodjeski. I don't have a loud fake clap and applause, so I'm just gonna. We don't have that in the budget yet, so.
Which is why we need you for views.
It's really not about you; it's about us. It's about what we want, what we need. For those of you that don't know, Alex is essentially one of the guys that helped start my journey into sports performance. It was a really good mix between him and Jordan Newsma. We actually interned together when he was much older than I and much smarter, and I was just an absolute idiot. So I had a lot of learning in a short amount of time that I had to get done to even hold a conversation. And it was kind of like when you have an older brother situation where you want to be cool, so you want to be involved. And it was kind of put up or shut up when it came to like getting that information. So this is the man that kind of expedited this entire journey. And he's a cunt. He's a good cunt. He's a son of a bitch. He's one of the best coaches I've ever seen get on the floor program, and he's never afraid to step in at any point in time and just demoralize an athlete by going in cold on a 315 bench press for a couple of reps. Alex, obviously, the goal of the show, number one, just as we always started, is first and foremost, it's beverages. I see you got something. What do we got?
It's just whatever. The Costco has C4 on sale, so I've got the old blue popsicle C4. I probably won't need the beta alanine to sit down and talk, but I'll certainly get more entertaining once the tingles kick in. So
that's a legendary poll. Christian?
Yeah, no, I did this one a couple weeks ago, but had to restock, and it's kind of the GOAT for me right now down here. Speaking of classics, we got White Monster. Bought about 7 of them yesterday. They were hiding them for some reason. Usually they're by the seltzers, but this time they were hiding by the sangria, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But shit,
they're
there.
The White Monster from the White Monster.
Yeah, I was gonna say they knew I was coming, and they were like, "Yeah, this guy's gonna buy out the stock." So, all reliable here.
I picked up something different, and I picked this specifically because we had Alex on. And when we used to be stuck in a room together, we used to crush the good old-fashioned Celsius heat. Now, RIP my boy, those are long gone. Those are one of the greatest things ever. Celsius let me... But they came out with a Celsius Essentials, which is a 16-ounce can, 274 milligrams of caffeine. And I got the Dragonberry flavor because that was the best flavor of the Celsius Heat, next to the blueberry pomegranate, of course, which you cannot find any flavor in anything. I know you were an orange sickle fan, weren't you, Alex?
Orange sickle is the second, but if I could ever get my hands on it, it was all about Applejack. It tasted like Apple Jacks, and then 300 milligrams of caffeine to the face at 4:30 in the morning. It was
that sounds
choice.
Incredible.
See, I think more companies got to do on the apple kind of front. Like the only one really out there is the sour apple, or the Warhead sour green apple, which it's okay, but after a couple sips, you're like, my stomach's gonna turn and I'm gonna shit my pants. So, I would love if Celsius did one of these in an apple, even if it was garbage, I think I might have to pick it up for nostalgia reasons. Or a blueberry pomegranate. That would go crazy too.
I will say I did have. It was when I was in Arizona, and we were at the facility, and me and my buddies were gonna train the next morning. So we picked up an energy drink the night before, and I found a green apple sour straws. I think it was from Rise. Rise is always doing those pretty good collabs.
Knockoffs or collabs, but even their knockoffs are pretty close.
Dude, that green apple sour straw was pretty banging. So, but that was the only time I've ever seen it. They're few and far between.
Another green apple is C4, of course, with the Jolly,
Jolly
Rancher green
Rancher.
apple. That one is
That's
an
banging.
absolute banger. That's a banger. But I think we just got to go ahead and
Pop that top.
You can't really see it, but I got some vapor. It reminds me of this is gonna sound fucking stupid, but that's us. Is dragon fruit like the kiwi, it's like a pink fruit with the white in it with the black specks?
I think so.
That's what it smells like.
Sounds right.
So.
I'm not a tropical fruit connoisseur, but that sounds about right.
You're the only one of us that's been out of the country in the past 2 years. You better be.
Don't worry about that.
You lived in the DR.
It's more of a pineapple type of island, you know? It's classical.
That's not as bad as I thought. Celsius has been letting me down on flavors as of late with their vibe flavors. This is pretty good. And the fact that it's the same price as a 12-ounce can for 16 ounces and 74, not 75, 74 milligrams more of caffeine, I would, right off the rip, I mean, one sip, everybody knows the rules. Just, I'm juiced. Let's do this thing. I'm so ready. Like, I got questions to ask.
That was a good one. That sounded like our intro.
Yeah, that actually did.
Is that where you got it from?
I wish. Alex, you were just so people are aware, this guy was a PhD candidate and then said, "Hey, I want to train. I want to actually get some grit, and I'm going to take all the brains that I have, and I'm going to also apply that to the muscles." You were a TA, correct, at Iowa?
Yep, teaching assistant.
Full academia, and then said, "Screw it, let's go right into longer hours and even less pay."
Well, that was my thing. So but through undergrad, I thought I was going to be a physical therapist, and I actually got done with football. I was fortunate to play football in college, and then started doing the shadowing hours that were a requisite to apply to PT school. And I've made it about 4.5 hours into outpatient PT shadowing and realized that this is garbage and I don't want to do this. So spent a year driving Zamboni and working at a rehab clinic, and then went to the University of Iowa for graduate school because I kind of funneled it down and realized what I like to do, and I like to help passionate people. And I realized that college students are usually pretty fired up about whatever it is that they're trying to major in. So college teaching, thought that was going to be a thing. The University of Iowa has a very strong college teaching program, but then over the course of the biomedical research that I had to do, I realized I was spending 70, 75 hours a week in the lab pulling mice apart and measuring how stiff their blood vessels were, and about 4 hours a week with actual students. And I realized that if I was going to be underpaid, overworked, and tired all the time and have a raging caffeine addiction, I'd rather flip those and read papers on the side and hang out with people a lot and be overworked and underpaid. So applied to intern at Concordia University in St. Paul, but back close to home so I could live with my parents, and because I knew I'd be making $0, but I went all in on the strength and conditioning side, and then ran into Brian back in 2017. From there, I got a couple teams at Concordia, started working at Northern Lights Junior Volleyball Club as a connection with our boss at Concordia. So I double timed it for 2 years. And then in May of 19, left Concordia just because it was one of them's paying me. The other, this volleyball thing was pretty cool. Spent about 6 months just doing the volleyball. Ended up coaching some junior high volleyball camps for a while. So I was technically a volleyball coach for a hot second. And then the opportunity at William & Mary opened up. Went through the interview from hell, got the job there. COVID happened. COVID saga at William & Mary happened, and then ended up bouncing over to Elon up to Carleton, because after some evaluation of life priorities, wanted to be back closer to home. Carleton College is back close to home. It's about 25 minutes from my parents' house. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. They didn't want to pay my guy, so I got another job offer, tried to leverage that. They shook my hand, said congrats, moved out to Washington, took the job contracting with H2F for a year and a half, and then now I'm at Brainerd High School back in Minnesota, back close to home.
Literally every level you can think of besides like JUCO, essentially. Like,
which with Concordia, is it though? Is it not JUCO?
Depends. I mean, officially D2, but
I mean, I had a couple kids do really well their freshman and sophomore year and transfer Division I. So it's like, is that not the JUCO experience? Just with slightly higher
we got
average?
2.5 in the associate's degree. Go on, get.
Yeah.
You have Division I FCS, 2 different levels. You have, H2F, basically the guy building our super soldiers. He built Captain America. He went Division II at the start of it, Division III, and now back to high school. Like every single level. What's the biggest difference that you see amongst those levels? And obviously, like the cop-out answer is going to be the type of athlete and the genetics that they have. I mean, like that's a given. Like from a standpoint, whether it be organizationally, whether it be, obviously the size of the population that you have in sheer numbers, whatever it is, like where do you see like the biggest differences, and what do you like not like and like about each one?
I would say there's more differences in the organizations that perform at a high level than there are between the levels, the traditional like Division I, Division II, Division III, high school. I also work as a developmental strength coach for USA Hockey right now. So I work at the 15th level, which is expanded. So I'm doing some stuff when I'm not physically at the camps too. But I'd say there's more in common with the high performing teams continue to make choices at both the coaching level and the athlete level, whether that's a cultural thing or whatever it is that lead to higher performance. Like it is actually a top 3 priority for those individuals to want to perform and play at a high level. Because I had teams that were more dedicated and trained harder and made better choices towards the ultimate goal of trying to be a high performing team at the Division III level and in high school now than I did sometimes at William and Mary. Like, and those are scholarship athletes getting paid a lot, but the coaches did not hold them to nearly the standard that was necessary for, like, you think Division I is like, there's going to be a lot of mandatory activities. It's just like, well, for some reason, all the lifting's optional. It's like, okay, it's really tough to work with that as a strength coach. Clearly I'm going to be biased about that. I'm going to be a little bit bitter about it, but versus even in high school, like you'll have the teams that show up to the state tournament every year, compete at a high level. They expect to win or make it to the section final at least make the state. And they're like, and those teams in high school are held to a higher standard than some of them that are in college. So I would say a lot of the base level choices, the things that you can't control, is it's like, I was never going to be a Division I basketball center. My dad's 6 foot tall. I don't have any 7-footers in the family. I was never going to do that. But like, especially at these quote unquote lower levels where the pool of athletes is so much bigger and the genetics doesn't necessarily play a role if you can at least get to that good level, like those higher performing organizations make a better priority of those choice things, like showing up on time, going to bed at the right time at night to get a decent amount of sleep. Like some are better than others, but they at least recognize that they should. How they conduct themselves when it's go time and when it's business time, like they focus way better. I try it. Even if they recognize they're not the best at it, they at least try to get better as they go. Versus others, it just like it's the kick the ground, F this, F that. They don't show up on time. The body language is terrible. There's always an excuse. My sarcastic thing is always like whenever there's any sort of issue that gets brought up, it's just like there's some whiny thing that gets in the way. It's just like, well, it's either this is a big enough priority for you to make a change to get better, or it's not. And if it's not, like the scoreboard doesn't care about your feelings. So when you lose in the first round of sections at high school, or you just don't have a great season, it's just like, it's not going to be like, well, we had to overcome all these definitely controllable things that we could have made a choice about. Like you end up with a team full of kids that just are not genetically suited to play that sport. Like you end up with a bunch of 5'5" tall guys, and you got to go play Hopkins with 6 Division I size dudes that are playing all year. Like, what are you going to do? But like, if the kids show up on time and tries, like, you're probably going to at least be better than most. But yeah, the obvious answer is genetics, where it's like, get a Division I volleyball team, they look like volleyball players. Your middles are going to look like a middle. The liberos are going to look like liberos. They're going to be shorter. There's going to be this massive height discrepancy within the team. Same with basketball. You end up with long, springy guys that play, unless you get a post player who's got a very ground-based game, because it seems like that comes around. There's always those thick ones that are more skilled and manage to pull that off. But like in high school, I would say like is it morphotype? Is that the right word? Like, it just doesn't necessarily match the sport sometimes. Like, you just end up with a kid who, like, man, I love this sport, but it's like, you're just not going to have the physical build to do it, and you're just going to have to be a grinder to pull it off. But they make the right choices, and they can still succeed to do those things. It's just like, they got to prioritize it way more than the guy that's just was built for it, so to speak.
Be a hell of a center here, 5'8", 170. Put me in, coach. I want to be in the post.
Yeah, but if you loved it enough and your ankles were as springy as they were, like, basketball center. But yeah, football center, like, you could tie you to a table at Pizza Ranch and you could put 50 pounds on that 5'8" frame and you'd probably be serviceable at a high school somewhere,
also
right?
True. Just pull the center, though, a lot.
Yeah, it's a choice. Like, especially some of these things where it is so highly physical. I would say another thing as well is that in the lower levels, so the Division III high school, where you're not able to select your talent, so to speak, because I would say that, well, the Division III even can, because it's still the top, 7% of high school athletes are still getting pulled up to that level. But when you're in a situation where you can't select the talent, I forgot where I was going with that, because the cat's attacking over the door right now. But if you're in a situation where you can't select the talent, like, I think you've got to learn to deal with those things as well.
Gotcha. Now, one of like your mantras, and this has been a thing for probably 6-7 years going on, was, making do and doing a lot more with a lot less in terms of like resources. Like, I know our old joke at CSP was our sports science budget was $2 in good intentions, right? If you're crafting out, and you're a guy who, I mean, you learned to code to actually build stuff to support that, because you didn't have the funding to go pick up an AMS system or some way that you can just truly auto-regulate. Like, you went through and said, I'm going to go build that. When you're looking at this and you say, all right, I got a limited budget, I need to track something to make sure that I can have like legitimate KPIs across a broad range of athletes. If you were going to pick one thing, and that's what you wanted to test, and that was going to be your KPI to make sure that you had some way of seeing your progress in an objective manner, other than, the coaching eye aspect of it, what are you picking?
Well, again, sports science budget is $7 in good intentions. We've nearly almost doubled the budget now. We're up to $7. The thing that I've hung up on and used a lot, I stole it from Matt Van Dyke when I was at Concordia, and I've still used it because it seems like I've been fortunate. Everybody's been able to, at least been willing to purchase a jump mat or get some vertical jump measurement. So this is very 2015 of me, but the hands-on hip vertical jump works very well. Using it as a readiness measure, using it as a test of lower body power, and then mathing that out with body weights, because there's the Brian Mann idea of this, like, you have a guy that puts on 50 pounds in an off season and his vertical jump doesn't move. He's like, well, he didn't get any better. I was like, well, no, he's moving 50 pounds of more mass the same. Like, there's a lot more displacement there, right? Or the CrossFit, so the relative power might not have moved, but the absolute power, the peak power, is way higher if you're able to hit the same vertical jump. So, like, using those power equations as well. Consistently measuring that helps me know, like, as a readiness measure of the athlete. It's not perfect. I mean, there's somebody with way more sports science budget that could definitely, like, hammer down on me on all the reasons why it's not great, but it seems to work because it's instant feedback, because it's kind of the main thing that a kid will keep track of. Is like, oh, my jump went up. They're like, great, it's working. jump didn't move this week or it went down. I was like, all right, how did your weekend go? Like, how did you sleep? How's your stress? Are you taking a peak test right now? Or he's like, so it's kind of opens the door to that conversation while also measuring something that correlates to a lot of things, especially in shorter action burst sports. So like even in golf, it's just like the lower body power aspect is like, it isn't perfect. The impulse in golf is a little bit slower than it is in a jump, but it's close enough that you can use it. And it's a good metric for that. Vertical jump gets measured in everything else. The hands on hip difference though, is that once you get good at using the arms, it adds so much influence to how high the jump is. So it's like is the organism or is the person stronger, or are they just getting better at it, which like they're both valuable outcomes. Like I'll test the regular standing jump too, because like getting more coordinated in a jumping action is a valuable outcome, right? I don't think I need to sell that, but if you have eighth grader that doesn't know how to move their body, and then you're trying to compare that to 2 years from now where they actually move it fairly well because they've learned all the coordination and stuff, it's hard to one that, because like you can teach somebody in a session to jump higher, but like the physiological stuff obviously takes much longer to adapt and to have those changes. So keeping that consistent and having it be a lower skill measure of output is what I've kind of stuck with. Force plates add to that. Obviously the jumps don't necessarily correlate to sprinting as much. So it's like I try to get sprint measurements on sports that run and all that. But if you're going to have me boil down to one that almost everybody does and I think is valuable, I think it's that hands on hip counter movement jump. And then, just keeping it low skill. So then they're able to measure it over time and have it be a fairly consistent measure of the physiology side of things more so than it is. But then even then there's inter and intramuscular coordination. So this is all messy. We know that, right?
Yeah. So that's obviously like a very like objective measure, like the number is the number. Do you look at anything like subjective, like I know wellness questionnaires are something you can do with at any level, don't need any fancy tech, or do you just try to look at straight subjective data when assessing like readiness and progress?
Wellness questionnaires are great. I use those as well. Again, because it helps the conversation things. And then something especially we noticed at the high school is like we end up like kid gets hurt or they have some nagging thing, they go to see the AT and just like they do the stuff because they're a good kid. But then for some reason they're not getting any healthier. They're just like having that wellness questionnaire gives it's like, oh, you're getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Of course you're not getting any better, right? You're not healing up. Or seeing consistent scores that don't really match up with what's going on. Like it's good to have that subjective and like kind of know how the kid's feeling because the internal load matters as well. I could do one thing, and because I enjoy being in a weight room, it's going to be a very different stressor than the kid that absolutely hates being in there. So that having that subjective aspect is huge, and just like keeping track of food intake and all that as best we can. But also with that, even just with that hands-on hip counter movement jump, you can watch the way that they execute it, which, I mean, you can get data with that with force plates, which, like, again, must be nice to have a sports science budget of $70,000 instead of $7, right? But you can just watch the kid do it, and it's like if they're executing it with less knee bend, it's a faster movement. They're getting off the pad faster versus a whole lot of knee bend, a whole lot of time loading it to get up, and they get the same number. Those are two very different things, right? Like I distinctly remember at Concordia, because I was always the guy on the mat. I would always like try to keep being that same tester. Like we had kids that were gamers, and like they're going to find a way to get their number regardless. But there's days where it's a fast twitching knee bend, and they're eating lightning and shit and thunder, and then there's other days where there's a whole lot of muscle to it. And it's just like, even though it's the same number, they got there two different ways. So it's just like, hey, you feeling all right? And it's like, I had 600 milligrams of caffeine to survive this today instead of the normal amount because I got 3 hours of sleep. It's like, okay, so we still got to pivot. Objectively, it says that you don't, but subjectively, it's like, yeah, we should probably back off based on the whole web of reasons that we have in the background.
There was two things that you said that I want to touch on. Number one was the absolute probably goated quote of "they're eating lightning, shit, and thunder." I'm stealing that. That's getting tossed at somebody in the next coming weeks. But the second one is a little bit deeper into this. It was the wellness questionnaire and like the subjective data that you're collecting. the biggest piece that you mentioned that I think a lot of people forget about is that you're not just collecting this data and saying like, oh, it's this or that. It's like you're using that to open a door for a conversation. And I think that's where a lot of people can go wrong with collecting this data and just saying like, hey, they didn't eat 5 meals. That's bad. That's bad. You know, this, that. It's like, no, you're saying, okay, this is what is coming up on this. What's going on? I need to go talk to that kid. And that's that interpersonal relationship that you have and establishing and like having like a genuine relationship with them to be able to have that conversation that's next level. Whereas you can either correct the behavior or make a true modification in order to get the best effort from them in that session or that week, whatever it is. Where do you think, like a lot of coaches, do you think it's like an inability to have that conversation? Or do you think it's like an unwillingness? Or do you think, maybe it's the coaches have 12 teams and they don't have time to do that and develop those relationships with people? Is it more so on the coach, or do you think it's the situation that they're placed in that limits those things from happening?
Both of them are very valid, because the difference of the ability that you have to have those conversations is dramatically limited when you're in a assembly line environment like high school or Division III, where like when I was at Elon, I think I was responsible for 40 athletes when football wasn't on. And then summer with football, I had summer programs, but the responsibility was lower, and I just had the bigs. Concordia was somewhere around 40, versus William and Mary, where I had 375. Carleton was 420. I think we have 914 kids in our database at Brainerd right now. So it's like the touch points are way, way less. So to me, like using it at Brainerd now, it's like I don't know where to look. I don't know who's in trouble, but it's like having that data. It's like I can scroll through a sheet and I start seeing red. It's like, okay, I gotta find these kids. I know when they're going to be in. I'm going to go see how they're doing. Um, but when you're in that big environment, and if you're responsible for that many kids, and you're responsible to be on the floor for all of them, you can't discount what sleep deprivation does to you socially and how willing you are to be kind to handle those situations well for some of them. I'm not sure. I mean, on the willingness side, I don't think anybody who's done this for more than 2 or 3 years can. Yeah, I don't think you can look at anybody and say that they don't care, because like this field sucks. Like the field itself sucks. The athletes are awesome, but the field sucks sometimes. It'll beat you down and wear you out, right? So I'm not going to accuse anybody of not caring enough to check, but like sometimes the situation the world puts you into and the vulnerabilities of yourself, because you're a human too. Like if your coaching readiness is low, you're not going to perform at a high level. And if your training, Carl Foster this, if your training load is incredibly monotonous, is like you're not going to recover very well either. It's just that your stress is coaching and time on feet and brain stuff instead of physical. And it's like if you're not recovering well, it's like by Thursday or Friday, it's going to be really, really hard to care about some college kid's sleep when it's like, he's getting more than I am at 4 hours a night, so it must be nice.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How I think that gets like overlooked too. We talk about, it's kind of like ironic, like we preach healthy habits to athletes, and then maybe partly because we choose to, but partly because of just like the stresses of the job, we're like not able to take care of ourselves as much as we probably would like to. And like one of my mentors would always talk about, like, we talk about high low in training systems, but when it comes to like your actual life, people aren't very good at that. It's always high, high, high for like strength coaches. And like you said, that monotony can kind of burn you out. And it's probably somewhat of a correlation to why a lot of people don't have super long careers in the field. So I guess a question on top of that is, how have you been able to do that? You say you have almost 1,000 athletes at the high school. And I mean, you've been in situations where you've had to deal with multiple hundreds. How does that differ from how you prepare versus when you had 40 to 50 athletes to now almost 1,000? Like, how do you take care of yourself to make sure that you can not just be a crazy raging caffeine addict that's going to yell at these kids and just melt their face off because you only got 2 hours of sleep.
Hey, chill out with that.
Hey, we're all a little guilty. Say we know what this podcast is about.
Sometimes you need to bring that. Sometimes kids do need to be pushed. However, well, I'm fortunate now because I technically work for the hospital. I don't work for the school itself. As we went through my resume, you'll notice that I've bounced a lot, and it's frankly because I've been willing to go to administration and tell them that this is messed up, this is too much, I need help. And if they haven't been willing to do that, flip them the double birds and bail because it's just not worth it. The main reason I left Concordia is that the administration said, like, well, we can't justify paying in the summer because there's not that many athletes there. We usually had like 200 some athletes training all set in the summer. So, and we'd be at the facility from 6 to noon running sessions. So there's a disconnect there. So and I left, head guy left. There was a big exodus. They got their guy. I mean, you can go look at their wins and losses record. It is what it is. The only job that I've left and kind of like wished it would have just worked out a little bit better because it was still a pretty sweet deal was at Northern Lights, but it's just a matter of like I'm 27, I need healthcare, guys. Like you gotta hook a brother up, and then being able to move up to the Division I level and work with Keir and Scott and Dr. Corum and Tony Carney and Ray Eady and like be in that environment, in a high performance environment, like it was too tempting. I wasn't really predicting a global pandemic would blow that whole thing up. You can't really anticipate that, but being willing to realize that employment is single player, and if the job isn't working for you, then just get out. In my case now at Brainerd, it was kind of trending towards that, but then the federal government upped the limit for it upped the payroll level that a position needs to be in to be exempt from overtime and salary. And the bottom end of the pay bracket through Essentia for strength and conditioning coaches is not high enough. So every strength coach is limited to a hard 40 hours a week now. So that forced the organization's hand. So in this case, we had to move ahead to the point where we were going to try to get to it and recognize it. Like I live around that 40 hours and we have coaches to cover other things, which fortunately at the high school level, you're surrounded by a lot of teachers and those teachers have kids and they value that. I don't have kids yet, but one of the main reasons I was trying to get back to Minnesota and try to get into a role that's a little bit quieter per se, was that I did not want to raise other people's kids at the expense of my own future children. So having their hand be forced and get to that 40 hours a week is helpful because now it's recognizing, okay, well, the brain behind all of this needs to get off the floor for at least half of his week so that he can use his brain, and then we can fill in the rest with these other individuals that are perfectly capable of leading a room full of high school age students, because that's what quite literally their degree is in, is educating high school age students, right? So they have a lot of education. They're really good at it. Some of them are better at it than I am. I'm just really good at the strength and conditioning thing. So it's like, here's your script. Here's why they're doing it. And if anyone asks, you go lead it so I can go get on the computer and make sure all the back end stuff and see like where we're supposed to be 4 weeks from now, where we're supposed to be now, like based on how kids are responding to training, whether or not it's been an appropriate dose or not, all of that stuff. But honestly, just being willing to stick up for yourself, say no, and double bird somebody, which I will admit I've been very fortunate with family backing and frankly a little bit of luck being able to keep falling into some of these positions that I have. It's not a thing for everybody to be able to do that, but got to bet on yourself sometimes too.
It's an interesting piece because a lot of people look at it and they go, well, you've hopped over this career. You've been in X amount of places in X amount of time. On the bird's eye view, when you look down at it, you're like, God, this guy can't just stick in one place. But with the context involved, you start to think, would it have been better if he stuck it out? But it's like, no, like if you're trying to promote change that betters the organization, then what, right? And if they don't want to accept that change and they're okay with keeping a broken system in place in order to just fill in whatever's next and not valuing the position or that piece of the organization, it's probably better to move along, right?
Mm.
and then you just you go to the next spot in hopes of it being better. And at which point, hopefully at some point you make each spot a little bit better. But like at the same time, like you said, it's a single player game. You have to make sure that the situation is viable for you. And when it's not, be willing to walk away. When it comes to the willing to walk away, like how firm of a believer are you of like, don't step out of one boat until you have another foot firmly in the other?
Um, Depends on how desperate or how crappy the situation is. When I left William and Mary, I was perfectly content with my strength and conditioning career being done. If this was, I sat in that hallway the last day before I resigned, and it was like, if this is what this is, I don't want to do it. This isn't what I signed up for. I had a complete misinterpretation of what the field is. If this is what the expectation is, like, screw it, I'm out. So everything else I've been doing since has been a bonus ball. um, falling in at Elon was cool. That worked out fairly well. I joke sometimes that my 9 months at Nick DeMarco School for Jaded Strength Coaches, because it kind of helped kick some of that out. It's a nice place to spend, especially after William and Mary hit the way that it did. But I mean, on the other hand, too, I had those 2.5 years that I was working in college and I stuck at the same place. I had the self-awareness to realize that like I need to have some amount of resume built up and some amount of success in one place. Is like, it's not that I'm the issue of not sticking around. It's like, it's just, I keep getting new opportunities. It's like, if you tell somebody that they were going to pay you $6,000 more to do the same thing, and the amount of stuff that you have in your life is enough to fit in a sedan and you can just move,
Do it.
like they probably recognize that, yeah, I'd probably do that too. Like, oh, the cost of living is lower and they're going to pay you more. Yeah, well, of course you'd do that because like you're not tied down with anything. Well, yeah, that's how that works. Like, it's not that I had disagreements with coaches at places, but it's like for every one of those I had two coaches that were going awesome with, and we had great success and we moved the needle. So it's like having a little bit of self awareness is like, am I the asshole because I'm the common thing in all these situations? Like, well, maybe, but I'm the asshole that's moving things in the right direction, and it doesn't seem like the winning coaches. If I'm the asshole, it's like they seem to get along with assholes then. So it's like maybe I'll just keep being this brand of asshole because the good coaches and the ones that align with my belief system seem to be winning things and doing well. And it's not a budget thing that I've ever usually asked for. And even if it has been, it's been something that I was promised would be an easily doable thing at some point in the interview process. It's like when it come time to ask it and they say no, it's like, well, you said that because I work with everybody and it's 20% of the student body, that it wouldn't be an equity issue. You guys you have so much money, apparently you don't need to fundraise, but suddenly it's a big problem that I'm asking for this drop in the bucket of money. Like, so you just don't care, and they don't really have a comeback. It's like, well, okay, so you don't care, and I don't either. Like, I can't do this half-assed thing. So, I feel like I wandered off the track there. What the point of the question was, but hopefully I hit it somewhere in there.
To be honest, and it's just an odd case, and you make a good point though of, you start to have like self-reflection on it of, am I the asshole? Am I the problem since it didn't work out here and I was there, but it also didn't work out here? But then you look at it like the microcosms of it, it's like, well, I had 2 out of 3 teams. 2 of those teams had coaches that had high expectations, were high performers, and our situation was more than great. It was maybe someone that was okay with just being there and having a status quo, or not, as from like a sport coaching standpoint, just letting things go underneath the radar and not being diligent and essentially being that like head figure that they're paid to be to enforce those smaller rules. On that piece though, I guess this is a 2-parter question, and we always ask this first part to every single one of our guests, right? I think you've alluded to a little bit on kind of what you've talked about, but the 2-parter essentially is like, part A, what do you think is wrong with the industry if you had to pick one thing? And the second part being, being being a very, very smart and intelligent individual and wise at this point in your career, and having done so much within the sports science realm at various levels with different budgets, like where do you see the field going wrong within like the sports science aspect?
I'd say the field as a whole does not do a good job of representing itself in a financial sense, which, I mean, that's what everybody's going to probably say because the wages will just kill you. Like, if you're an assistant level, basically anywhere in the country, you're going to be making, 50 to 70? And we could have been having this conversation 10 years ago, and it's the same thing. And just turn on the news and we could see that inflation graph get thrown up nowadays. Like, it costs more to live now than it did 10 years ago, but everything, we still get paid the same. I think it's fairly indicative of the turnover there too. The thing that stinks is that there just isn't a lot of like decent paying positions in the field. Like, there's a lot more room for assistants than there are for heads when it comes down to it, especially in the collegiate sector. So you end up getting either completely pushed out of the field if you started in collegiate, you wanted to stay there, or you end up getting pushed to private. The fortunate thing that the field has had, but has managed to bungle that, is like the tactical sector should have been a massive expansion of opportunity for us. And at least my experience in H2F kind of made me realize just how thin the number of actually good strength coaches probably is. There's a lot of people that pass their CSCS and that aren't that good. So it's like, oh, so maybe this is why wages aren't all that high, because you hire somebody with 2 years of experience and God knows if they're good or not. And also having had a few classes of interns, like I got spoiled when we were at Concordia because they're like, well, now Brian, you're in year 5, 6 of being paid as a strength coach. I'm in year 8. Jordan's down with the 49ers. Zach's running his own business. There's just like, we had like this really good core of interns that like turned into professionals, and with like 1 or 2 duds. And since then, it's like some of the intern classes that I've had where it's like we've got 1 or 2 that are left in the field a year later. So it's like you kind of realize it is as thin as some of the old guys said it was. Like, there isn't a lot of folks that are actually sticking in it, and then there isn't all that much good stuff. And then being financially viable for the long term, it's like if you're 30 years old and want to start doing adult stuff, like you want to start having kids, you want to settle down, you want to buy a house, like it's going to be really tough to do that on a probably mid-major and below assistant salary. It's like higher levels, it seems like you can get away with it, but like the wages just aren't all that high. And that it's if we live in a capitalistic society, like if you're not making money, it's really tough to be comfortable. There's like the number was from 4 years ago or so, or like if you're making $75,000 a year, you can live comfortably. It's like, how many strength coaches were making that back then? Not a lot. And it's like that number's probably pushing 80 or 90 now. So if you can't live comfortably, you can't seek to retire. It's like you're going to end up pivoting out. Sports science wise, we're doing depends on who you ask. Like, we're doing a lot of good innovation. We're looking at new things. It's like, you find the right sectors. Like, we're looking at stuff well. There's sometimes though, I think we lose the core of what strength and conditioning and this is like, and it's applying stress to an organism to make a change in the organism. And sometimes, if Instagram is to be believed, there's not a whole lot of stress application happening in some cases, and sometimes getting the number takes a higher precedence over the applying the stress part. And I've seen that happen firsthand, where it's like, oh, the device isn't working, so we got to spend 25 minutes fixing this, and the athletes are just standing around instead of being like, all right, screw it, tech sucks. Get under the bar, take care of the meat and potatoes of the things that's actually supposed to make the changes that we're supposed to be collecting numbers on here. It's like, yeah, the lasers didn't work today, whatever. Rip your sprints anyway. It was just free. Buddy up with somebody instead of getting a time and try to race them. Get into the weight room, we'll lift. We'll just bang the weights around. It's like, oh, the VBT device doesn't work, so we're not going to lift today. It's like, that's foolish. Like, still lift. Here's a ballpark. Last time you feeling good today? All right. So instead of 70, you'll go 75%. It's like, you feel like crap. It's like, and then just eyeball it the way that it was done for 50 years before tendos got more popular and more useful. But I'd say the application of stress part gets lost for the data science geek part sometimes. So it's like you're putting the cart before the horse. Like the cart helps the horse get more things done, but it's like at the same time, like the horse has just got to run too. So Yeah, just don't lose the forest for the trees with it. Like, yes, the numbers are nice and they help you inform training, help you change things, but it's like if you're not applying enough stress to make a change, then what's the point? Like, don't lose a session because of that.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I love that. On top of that, those are the problems. Do you think, like, for the first one especially, like the second one I feel like is easy, like use tech as you can, but don't forget to train hard. For that first issue, do you think there's a solution
Yeah.
for that? Because I know some people have been starting to, the pay, I'd say, in certain realms has started to increase, but it's also kind of like, duh, inflation, it needs to happen. Do you think there's a solution for that? Or do you think it's just going
Yeah.
to be continual mass exodus of people going to sectors where they can make more money? Because, I mean, as much as, college people sometimes like to talk unfavorably about like the private sector, there's a lot more money to be made in that sometimes than there is in college. So it's like, can you really blame them? Because it's cool to say you work for a Division I school, but if you can't, you're 35 and you can't even afford to put a down payment on a house, is it worth it? Depends on the context. Do you think there's a solution for that, or are we just all screwed?
I think the issue at the college level is the same issue that professorship has run into, so having seen both sides of that coin, both the marble columns of academia and the dungeon of the weight room. Like, it's the same problem. The individuals doing the bulk of the work and creating the product that gets utilized are not the ones getting paid as much, but then the administrators are the ones collecting all the money. So you end up with a bloated administrative group that's collecting a lot of checks to sit in an office, but then the groups that are actually working and doing the thing don't see as much money. The valuation of support staff within athletics is a little bit different. I'm not sure why we aren't valued higher. Clearly, I'm biased, but just by the sheer volume of athletes that we work with, um, I think we need to see more head strength and conditioning coaches be placed into administrative roles, because being in that role at a college and I'm trying to balance the needs of 30 different, or what was it? It was 21 different teams. It's just like, I can't be subordinate to 21 people. That doesn't work. I'm responsible for this space. I'm responsible for this facility. I'm responsible for scheduling. That sounds administrative. Why am I not having that athletic director role? And it seems like those schools that have those individuals in at least the athletic director title seemed like those individuals stick around a little bit longer, and those schools get ran a little bit better, and the programs are a little bit stronger than the ones where they're in a support staff role and they're trying to make 20 different masters happy, and they just end up regurgitating the same program with maybe an exercise change and a team name change at the top. But I think there's so many structural issues in universities in general that it's more systemic than just us. It's not something that we can really fix unless you're in a position where you manage to get a good amount of influence within your administration to help them change your position into an administrative type position where you can start doing administrative type things. But some of these schools just aren't going to change because there's a lot of groups that are really good with the status quo. There's a lot of schools that just really, there are some athletic directors and athletic departments that are perfectly okay with the way things are because they're making enough money for where they live. They punch in, they punch out, and it's good. That's good for them. They're just going to ride it out to retirement. They're just going to ride it out for whatever it is. And if they're not willing to actually try to change something for the better, then it's like you're going to run into problems. It's like it's something that to me it's out of our hands to an extent, unless you manage to get somebody that's going to be super helpful. Like when I was at Concordia, I started getting paid because the athletic director at the time, Lunch McKenzie, came into the weight room on too many occasions and saw me at the desk. Like, you're still here? Like, I saw you at 6 and it's 11 now. Like, how many hours are you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm usually doing 7 a day during the week. And I go home and like, we got to get you paid, dog. And he talked with every sport coach and he took a chunk out of every one of their budgets. And I started getting a stipend a month later. Like, it takes an administrator that gives a shit to actually change these things. And the issue is I think one of the issues I think is that there's a lot of sports that aren't as married to the weight room. Like football's got 50, 60, 70 years of being like this. There's a lot of sports that aren't that way, and especially at the middle to lower levels. At the higher level, everybody's got a strength coach now. Every Power 5 team's got one, and it's an integrated part of the team and all that. But like some of these, the middle levels, so to speak, didn't have that when they were athletes, so now they're not necessarily going to value that. And then if you're in the middle level, you're not trying to iterate and see like, all right, this successful team is doing this. It's like, well, this is what we did and it was fine. It's like, you're just a sideshow. Like, they're going to pay you like a sideshow, and that's all it's going to be.
This kind of reminds me of a conversation I had with Dakota at Wingate, where they just got a new AD. The new AD had experience as a strength coach, had seen it firsthand, like the problems that kind of went on when they were in that position. And now that it's coming to a pass where it's like, hey, the weight room's not big enough. Like just for football alone, we have like 215 athletes. Like that's a lot of guys. And he's like, we have like 16 racks or 18 racks, whatever it is. He's like, we need more space. We need to update some of the equipment. But like the biggest deal is like, he's like, we have racks that are underneath like a staircase. So like, this is tough on us. So when they began having talks for that conversation, like the situation prior was like, oh, well, we can update some racks. And he's like, no, like space is the issue. Like if we have to like get additional racks, we don't necessarily need to just overhaul what we have. We need to build the addition. And like this new AD is very much on that aspect of, oh, we need to give you the support to be successful, because at this point, this is not a sustainable thing. And like seeing that vision down the line, like you had mentioned of like more strength coaches need to move into that administrative role to make the change, because no one else is probably going to vouch for you in that aspect. It's going to take someone who probably, if they haven't been in that position, someone who cares deeply about athletics as a whole, or it takes someone who was in the shit show coming into it and saying like, there's a broken gear in the system. This has to get worked through. Right. And so on that note, like you said, like getting that there, where do you see, like if a strength coach is trying to come in and make that change, like where do you see them, like what would be their path if they want to get that done? Is it additional schooling? Is it voicing that for themselves of like, hey, when this is an open position? Or is it coming into it and saying, hey, I think like building my position, such as like DeMarco did, where it's like, I think being a director, but also being like an associate AD is like something that like this position should turn into to get our voice within that conversation. Loaded question, I know.
The only one, I'm not sure. Admittedly, if I knew how college administrator brains work, my career path would probably look a little bit better. I wouldn't have so many second places at Power 5 interviews, right? I would say managing to find who the influential players are within the organization and then getting them on your side is helpful. I would say that would be the move. And then sometimes it is misleading in who the influential players are. That's kind of the benefit that I have now at Brainerd, is that my interview panel was the activities director, which the athletic director for high school. It's just that he's also responsible for choir and band and all those guys. So activities, the head football coach who's been there he would have coached me if I went to Brainerd High School. I'm not sure how exactly long he's been there. And then the now curriculum head for physical education. So those three were the ones that were the head of this search panel. So I've really got a lot of key players in places to be able to make things work. And that's why I'm like right now, it's like I'm fortunate to be seen as a subject matter expert. So I bring up an issue and like, yep, all right, well, let's find a way to get it fixed, because that sucks. That's dumb. In college, I'm not real sure. I mean, it seems like the one that I know in Minnesota that recently went from the head strength coach being a support staff role to an associate AD role was St. Olaf College. I know one of the Elon alums is over there now, Waters. But that took them going through 3-4 strength coaches in 3 years. So they really needed to realize that there was a problem, and sometimes they had to get hit in the crosswalk a few times to realize that, hey, maybe we should put a bridge here instead of just having it be a crosswalk. Like, it's the way the world works. Unfortunately, like somebody's got to get hit by a truck in order for there to be a change. In this case, it was probably 4 people that got hit by trucks, and then number 5, it landed in a slightly better situation. So, and unfortunately, it's not the administration that gets hit by the truck. It's somebody at a lower level. So they're separated from the consequences of their inaction until it's like, oh, we have to hire this position for the 5th time. It's like, maybe we should actually figure something out here. It's one of those things that to me it's out of our hands, but also I have not managed to convince somebody to do that. So maybe there's a better podcast guest for that one.
Yeah. Kind of to flip the script to a little bit more of the actual training stuff. I feel like long-term athletic development is a hot topic, and it starts in high school with a good strength and conditioning program. So what's your outlook on LTAD in your situation at the high school level, and how do you try to set people up to make that jump to college and be well prepared, but also not, expose them to stuff that they don't need?
I would say the biggest thing in my situation is just the base level expectations. It's probably been my biggest frustration in the first year, because I had thought I had worked with high school athletes. There's a difference between working at a high level club than there is working with a group of kids that just so happens to live close to the school that you're working at. There's a big difference there. And having the issue of a very variable culture between like the individual organizations that you deal with. It's kind of similar to college, where it's like swimming is going to handle themselves way different than baseball is. It's just the way that it is. They're just different kids. It's different coaches. The expectations are different. So in my case, like trying to I'm still trying to get expectations to a level where I can do some of the cooler things, but from a nuts and bolts training perspective, especially because like there's a lot of nitty gritty stuff with long-term athletic development, like peak height velocity and like developmental stages and biobanding and those sorts of things, right? So, and then the trainability of those things, and there's some debate on whether that's real or not. But if it is, you're going to end up with a room with 30 kids in it, and just like you got 30 kids on a team, and you got to train the 9th graders, the 12th graders all at the same time. And in my case, I've not established long enough for anyone to really even, like, I'm still teaching kids what supersets are a year later. I'm going to remind them, it's like, no, you do this, one set of this, one set of this, one set of this, go back to the top, your second set. Like, I'm explaining that. That's not even like sometimes the exercise stuff. So like you have this big bandwidth of kids and maturity level. So it's trying to get it to where it isn't perfect for everyone, but it's less wrong for everyone. So what that results in for me is just like, okay, there's this big chunk of kids that are kind of here because it's 9 to 12th grade boys. So you have some that are still in the midst of puberty. You have some of them that are just like on the back end of it. Maybe they've gone through their second round of it. It's like, what? If this is trainable for this group and it's trainable for this group, just make sure that we're hitting everything enough that it's going to move the needle. So with these developmental groups, I usually end up sticking with more of a concurrent training model with submaximal training with strength throughout the year, keep the movements fairly consistent. That way they're always addressing the skills of certain things. From a developing the college side of things, I kind of keep that in mind. Like the working at the high school is less of a college prep environment than working at the club was. Like at Northern Lights, I think the final count with the kids that I worked with, there's like 150 kids that ended up signing athletic scholarships out of the 300 girls that I trained when I was there. Like it's wild. It's like, it was a really cool thing that I did not really appreciate at the time. It was really fun to work with them. Like now it's like we get 4 a year, 5, 6 a year. So not everybody's going to go on to that, but keeping in mind that some of them might. So like, I'm not necessarily a proponent of the Olympic lifts. I don't think you need to use them to do it, but I know that some of these kids might go on to do that. So utilizing movements that will set them up for success with it. So it's like, to me, it's like, okay, they might not have power clean for 4 years. They might not have hang clean. They might have done it off and on because we have a competition through the school and I want to set them up for success there. But Now, if they front squat well, they can hold a good front squat position. They RDL well, they hinge well, they're fairly explosive kids. Their jumps, sprinting, all the general athletic stuff is like if the kid can hinge and the kid can front squat well, it's like and you take them through 3 weeks of a freshman in college's power clean or whatever your Olympic movement is development is like they're probably going to do all right. They're not going to be a complete fish out of water. They're going to pick it up fairly fast. And if you've had enough variability where they've been learning to move throughout high school, they're going to be a sponge and be able to pick up on that fairly quickly. So like at Lights, I never Olympic lifted anybody, and I had some kids go off to go do that, and they're just like with sometimes the girls that are built to play volleyball are not built to be Olympic lifters. Like you think the classic middle where they're built like a daddy long leg spider with a tiny torso and these enormous limbs is like find somebody in the Olympics that looks like that doing Olympic lifting. Just try. You're not going to. So they're not going to be all that successful with it, but if somebody wants to do it, they can still get into these positions fairly well. But sticking with what I've found works and what works in my mind as well is like when you're dealing with that wide band is like just trying to address everything a little bit in a level of stress that's going to work enough to move the needle, which with high school athletes, it doesn't take a lot. And they're probably doing way more than you think that they are. Even like what you're prescribing is like there's probably some other thing on the side. They'll have a camp here, they'll have this, they'll have that, the other thing. So it's like even when I've wanted to really dial things up a little bit, like I find out somebody's got something else going on or there's camp or whatever. So it's like doing enough strength and doing it consistently enough that it's always there, sprinting enough that they're always sprinting, they're always jumping, they're always getting some general motor skill work in, even if you're not a general motor skill type person, but some rhythm and coordination type work in. One of the jokes that I make where I tell these kids is like when they like Division I, right? Like I've kind of being at the high school level, like seen the athlete of the year talk. So it's like you have this like, oh, it's the best athlete we've had come out of here in 20 years, and athlete of the year this, and all Metro that, and all this like wild stuff is like, well, then at Division I, it's our job as ninth graders. They pull up and then you put 15 of them on the line. You call them shit bags. And then you realize that all these best athletes that the town has ever put out can't skip. So then you put them through a 6th grade gym warm up for 9 weeks and they get faster and you look like a genius. Like, so one of the things that I end up doing, and I tell the kids this, is like, I'm used to taking the best kid in this room, multiplying them by 10, putting them through a simple warm up for 9 weeks and getting better. It's just like, so you're going to end up doing the same dynamic warm up quite a bit because it's important. Like if you go off somewhere and you can't, like if just basic 6th grade level skipping is something that's going to differentiate you than from 90% of people, it's like, we're going to skip a lot. We're going to gallop, we're going to backpedal, we're going to do these basic things. And it's like, because there's, even if like, okay, yeah, you're better than it in a week, like, but then you take the state champ triple jumper and you put him next to the kid that's been doing it for 3 weeks. So like that state champ triple jumper gallops way better and it looks way better than the random 10th grader. So like there's a bandwidth of how well you can do this thing. Like just keep moving that, even if it's from a C to a C plus, like it's going to make you a better athlete. So I think it's simple, it's consistent, it touches everything in those within those bandwidths that you need to. I don't want to say minimum because we got to move the needle at times, but it's like you pick your spots to hit things hard when you can, you back, and you keep it minimum when you need to keep it minimum.
I like that. I don't know about you, French, but I think that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah, that was everything I wanted and more.
I gotta ask this. Various different levels. I mean, probably over your entire career, I would definitely say, especially just now with that Brainerd, you're already pushing 1,000. You probably worked with over 4,000 different athletes. What was your favorite athlete to work with and why?
Man, I got like 7 of y'all in group chats, so I can't really say this out loud without pissing somebody off. All right, from the high level detail side of things, the scratching the itch, the guy that likes all the geeky sports science stuff, the little details matter, all of that. Present company, Brian would be that one. It was a very fun thing for me to have somebody that was not doing track for 3 years, but had basically an accidental track background because of what Jordan Newsma and Rich White did training wise. Watching you beat the current record, at the time, the record holder in the 60 meter at Concordia in a 40-yard dash on the turf, having things go horribly south with your pec tear. The order of events there is probably off, and you might have torn it first, but then realizing that football wasn't necessarily going to work out, but we have this track thing, and then being able to kind of convince you that might be a good idea a little bit. I'm not sure how much of a percentage I've played in that, but it was in there somewhere. It might have been just a 1%er, but then seeing that develop, being able to be like constant contact, that hyper detail, that's probably as close I'll get to working with an actual Olympian during that time frame where like, this is the guy, I'm going to sit down with him one-on-one. Like we're going through probably way too complicated of a program for what it needed to be, but it sure seemed like it worked. Being that invested and then having it pay off, it was a lot of fun. And now seeing your career evolve as it has. So it's like, unfortunately, we only worked together again for like, what was it, 2.5 weeks? So I've just been running from me everywhere that we've gone.
Twice. Almost
Right.
3 times if you count. Almost 3 times if you count me almost getting to intern at William and Mary until COVID.
Yeah. Hey, Corm, Uncle Kier came calling. What do you want from me? But seeing that evolve, and now you having the success that you're having at the Division I level and all of those things, job a team builder and all of that, it's been awesome. From a more youth athlete perspective, there was a couple down at Northern Lights where it was really fun to have them. Like you could see that mental switch flip. And I talked about choices earlier, but that's my biggest frustration of going from USA Hockey Development Camp in the summer and then coming back working with high school kids. Is like, yeah, okay, yes, they are the best 200 girls hockey players in that age bracket in the United States of America. They're savages, but it's the way that they conduct themselves and the way that they approach things. And like, even if they don't like this aspect of it, they care enough about this other thing that they realize that they need to at least give a shit. Like, it doesn't need to be a lot of shit, but it's like they need to at least show up, be present, and attack what they have, and like not just phone it in. Seeing those girls at Northern Lights flip that switch, turn the corner, see the benefit from it, and then have their careers prosper as a result of that has been huge. And then some of them actually ending up going to be coached by my former interns at other places has been really rewarding. And then one, they remember me fondly. So it's like, as much as I remember myself as an asshole from those times, like it must have been, again, the right brand of asshole. And them continuing to be leaders in this and like seeing the value of it has been very valuable. It's the nitty gritty detail part is fun, but then also seeing the behavior changes and then also seeing there's like, oh, this does help. This is a great place to be. I like this a lot because that's more or less why I'm in this to begin with. I had a very influential strength coach early on in my career. So when I was, call it a career, I was a 6th grader, but he was a family friend of ours, and we helped put in a wall at his gym. And in return for that, my dad was a contractor. Bud was also a very handy person, but my dad and I helped him put in a wall at the gym, and as a result of that, I basically got to train there for free. Bud Bjorner is a Minnesota legend track coach and strength and conditioning coach. He was at Apple Valley High School for so long, but he was the NSCA director for 20 years until it's like, all right, we just need to change face because we can't have it be a dictatorship in this region. Like we got to have it change the face of who's the lead of it. But Bud is like, he's one of those legacy panel guys, and between him and Larry Metters, they gave me such a positive experience in this that this has just became something that I can't get away from. Like it's just sort of, I almost kept trying to bounce away from it, and it just kept coming back. And then I ended up having this career now because of like I know how positive this space can be, how positive influence can be, and then I had so many crap coaches in other ways. It was like I kind of figure that if I'm in the seat and I'm caring and not trying to be I'm genuinely trying to get better as a coach and genuinely trying to help these kids get better, there's some asshole out there that's sitting on the couch not coaching, because at least there's one guy in this room that cares. and which might be a little bit of a bleak outlook on things, but with some of the coaching experiences that I've had, like sometimes just reducing the amount of like actual true pricks in the room can make a positive experience for somebody.
Dude, hell yeah.
I love that.
That was a loaded question for sure, but damn.
Yeah.
I love that. I got one more to kind of bring it back to, because I think you have, like you said, unique perspective on the on-floor coaching, but also the research kind of background, almost like stepping fully into that world. Do you think that experience with like learning like the physiology and like getting in the lab helps you as a coach? And do you think like some people kind of lack that? Because I think it kind of, it can go both ways. You got the sports science people who are too into it's all about the numbers and not as much about the coaching. But then you got guys who are maybe really practical, but they lack a little bit of that baseline,
Foundational knowledge.
Right, that foundational knowledge that while maybe not always practical, if you can kind of trace it back to how the body works and that first principles approach, could maybe be holding them back as a coach. So do you think that helped you? How so? And where do you think maybe people are missing the boat, and how can they improve? We're just throwing loaded questions at you, one after another here.
Yeah. I think it's helped a lot. It definitely, but I've never interned for Cal Dietz, even though I've been accused of being a Dietz fanboy a few times in the way that I train folks. But going through essentially a biochemistry master's program and then him posting way too much good free information is like, I'm going through learning about cardiovascular adaptations of the heart and all the different reflexes and all of that. And then he posts something on that was the initial post on his YouTube channel about like super maximal training and how it, utilizing this system, he's had guys go from a 55 resting heart rate to a 38 without conditioning. I mean, depending on what you call conditioning, like if you're doing a circuit in the weight room, there's an argument that that's conditioning, but it's a lift, I guess, in his mind. I was like, well, yeah, because he's like, there's this reflex, he's influencing it this way. If it gets influenced that way, it's going to drop the resting heart rate. If you do this, it's going to increase or decrease the pulse wave velocity, so there's going to be less stress in the heart during all these things. It's going to have positive additive. So like it's like he opened up a cardiovascular physiology textbook. Is like, how do I poke this? How do I change it? This is how I'm going to do it in the weight room. Here's the practical application of it. Like being able to look at like this practical end game thing and also the biochemical and physiological responses to that, like how it's going to influence in the long run. I think that's definitely helped. It also helps with testing things, understanding reliability and validity, and just like recognizing all those little tiny things that change over time. Because like if you change the way that you measure something every time that you measure it, it's not going to be the same measurement, right? So it's like having the same, like as little as having the same tester managing the thing as best you can, because sometimes staffing availability changes and you got the one off. But also mentioning just like, hey, Josh ran this one. For some reason, everybody's numbers are lower than when I ran the other three. So it's like, there's the only difference there is like who ran it, who who proctored it. So it's like those little things as you're measuring progress matter, as well as like just thinking about the application of stress over time and recognizing how the body's going to adapt to it. Like you don't necessarily need to have the understanding of the NAD cycle that I had to in order to graduate from Iowa, but like it certainly helps to understand how you're influencing that, or like, okay, well, this is why going on a low carbohydrate diet for 3 months might actually have a positive influence on your aerobic system over time. So when you go back to a higher carbohydrate environment, you're actually going to be able to perform at a higher level. Maybe not initially because your outputs might not be as high because you haven't had full octane gas in you for a while, but like your aerobic base will be higher so that you can spike. Like it's all of those little background things help. And as well as I think too, being successful in when you don't have all the super neat sports science stuff, sometimes it's just being less wrong than the guys that you're competing against. So being able to navigate that and be like, well, I might be wrong in this way, but I'm not going to crash the car. Like I'm not going to run into the guardrails because it's like, so it's like, it might not be enough, but we're not going to run into this way, and being able to reason that as many different ways as possible and realize like all these flashing lights and all these things that you're trying to avoid, like sometimes you might be missing this one, but you're running straight into the pole of some other thing. So it's like trying to navigate all of those to mess up less means that you get out of the way of high level performance somewhere down the line, which, especially with in-season programming and team sports, to me, it's just about getting out of the way of the main thing. So like if they're not in a position to be able to learn their sport skills at practice to whatever degree that the sport coach is able to teach them, if they're not in a position to be able to be as ready as possible for high level competition, then you have any amount of influence on that you're getting in the way of it, like you're messing up. So like in my mind, getting out of the way while still moving those measures of what you want from your strength coach. So like, are they getting some measure of strength higher, whatever that is, whatever, if you want it to be isometric mid-thigh pull, or if it's front squat or whatever your strength measure is, and that creeps up over time, it's probably indicative that that creeps up over time, as well as some better KPI moves up. It's like, okay, they're at least recovering enough, and they're at least getting the thing that they need, while also being as ready as possible for game day. So like, I don't necessarily need to be doing super high volume anything when they're in season, because it's like I'm the background. But it's like if it moves, I'm doing enough, and it's like also making sure they're in a position to perform at a high level, and like letting, in some ways, the psychology side of things, or like letting them know that you know what's happening. Is like, I'm trying to make this adjustment to hopefully get out of the way. It helps the athletes buy in a little bit more, so they'll like attack your training a little bit better when it is time to attack. But also just not screwing things up and doing way too much volume, say going into a conference title game, like, and just like they're end up fried, versus like it's all things. If all things being equal, you have two equally skilled teams and one team's more ready to go physically, more recovered, whatever it is, the higher readiness team's going to perform better and probably win that. And it's nice to go into late fourth quarter or overtime situations and being like, well, I kind of planned for this, because we backed off quite a bit. It's like we probably ended up doing way less than the other team did this week, but it's like we should be fresher in this moment than they are, than seeing our athletes do some clutch thing and watching another athlete across the ball or across the court, wherever it is, choke. It's just like, well, it worked.
Yeah, I love that. Another question just on top of that. I feel like you know a lot in a broad width, but what is like continuing education look like for you now? You've gone through like a lot of different transitions in your career. You know, Brian mentioned that you basically taught yourself how to code. Obviously, you know physiology very well. What does that look like for you now? And does it look different now that you're in a much different position versus when you started?
When I started and I was younger, I had way more problems that I needed to solve. So I was digesting a lot more stuff. Like when I was at Iowa, I kind of, you could say that I was getting an unofficial master's degree in the background. So it'd be like, I'm reading some physiology paper, reading this, reading that. And then on the weekends, like my fun reading is I'm reading Joe Ken stuff, and I'm listening to CVAS, but I'm doing all of that. So I kind of had a master's in strength and conditioning that was completely unmeasured. And then I would also end up being kind of the voice of meatheadedness in the room if any of those studies popped up. Like we had a cardiovascular physiology room. It was kind of a moment like, oh, maybe I do belong here moment. They were talking about antihistamines and its effect on performance over time. And it was at the University of Oregon. I think they had some triathletes or something, but it was over the course of a multi-day competition taking antihistamines. They're like, well, there was no significant difference in performance. But it's like, well, if you're dealing with University of Oregon athletes, 0.5% difference in track and field over 2 days is the difference between you being on the podium and you not even making the final. So like those little things, like not statistically significant, but it's like, I think it's effect size and probably the more important thing to look at is like everyone moved this way. They all got better, but it wasn't statistically significant. But you look at the data, everyone's dots went left to right. Everything went better. It was like, you're telling me this is a 0.5% difference because you took a Zyrtec? Yeah. The downside is that you're going to be a little bit more sore after the fact. I was like, well, keep that in mind. Keep it in your back pocket. It's like a 0.5% difference. Like maybe you don't want to do that during early indoor season where it's a lot of developmental stuff, or if it's post conference, is like when you're trying to develop things and you need to adapt more than you need to perform, that don't do that. But like if you have a 2-day conference final or you got a meaningful thing ahead of you, yeah, pop some Zyrtec, because apparently it's going to make you feel less sore and you're going to perform at a higher level, even though it's not statistically significant. They're like, I had that rant, and I just had a bunch of other PhD candidates just kind of nodding, and the MD PhD reading. That makes a lot of sense. Like, I just had Dr. Strauss compliment me. That's awesome. So now, though, when I was working with H2F, is like the issues that I ran into is I was working with more endurance athletes than I really ever had, and like actually programming that. It's like you work with cross country in a collegiate setting. You're not programming the running. Like, you wish you knew what they were doing running wise. You kind of get told that, hopefully, but like you're not the one programming it. Now I'm the one programming it. So I had to figure that out. So getting into a lot of like the polarized training approach to the 80-20 running stuff, doing that. I had never done it personally. So getting into that and almost training like a 10K runner for a while, just to like actually feel that and to be able to relate to it. And then also make light of it, that I'm happy with a 49-minute 10K time, and I'm dealing with guys that are doing that in 30. Like, I can make jokes about it and understand it. Like, I recognize that your cross country runners are dogs too. It's just a little bit of a different brand. But the thing that helped me a lot was being ruthless with the problems that I had within my programs and trying to get them better and trying to address these things. It was like, whether there was, I don't feel like I'm communicating this well enough, so I need to be able to relate to it better and just like actually get in there and do it myself, or recognizing how could I do these little things better. So finding whatever problem it is that you're having and go try to solve it. Like, if you're sitting on your hands and you don't really have anything professional development wise that you think that you could do better at, like, look harder, because there's probably something that you could be in. So right now, to me, it's getting back into the long-term athletic development stuff, developmental psychology, because there are certain things that kids at this age bracket will just not understand depending on how old they are. Like the one that easily comes to mind under pressure here is like, if you tell a group of sixth graders to spread out, they have no idea what you're talking about, because they do not understand that abstract concept. But if you tell them all to go fingertips, like, make sure you spin around, make sure you can't touch anybody, they'll do that, and it spreads out. But they don't have the abstract concept of what spreading out means. So like being able to communicate to a group and being able to handle that. And then just the biobanding stuff. Some things on injuries and return to play things right now, especially with the sports science budget of $7 and good intentions, like being able to, how are we going to identify a unilateral deficit in lower body stuff between two athletes? Triple hop test is something that we're leaning in towards with USA Hockey now. There's like something that we proposed. We'll see if we're actually going to do that, because we wanted some sort of rehab based thing, but doing a functional move. Like, you could have a whole podcast talking shit about the FMS and all the reasons why that doesn't work. But it's like, we have some other measures, like, okay, your left leg and the right leg, there's this discrepancy. You got to do single leg stuff, or just getting a baseline over time is like, for that matter, like if you tell somebody that you're measuring a triple single leg bound, like, that's a fairly elastic activity. So there's more things from that you can glean from it. It's like, oh, you're a bouncy kid, so you can go super far and it's fairly balanced. But it's like, but all it takes is a tape measure and a good practitioner, right? Just finding the problems that you have and trying to solve them, because somebody's probably solved them already. I think back when I was at Iowa, when Brian Mann was on CVAS, he was talking about this, like, oh, some folks will try to develop all these power equations and all that. It was like, well, Bosco did that already. Like, that paper exists. Just go read it. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already there. Like, go just try to go find it. Because if somebody's probably ran into the issue that you have, somebody's probably wrote about it. There's probably something. So it's like, go digging. Like, Google's awesome. It's problematic how easy it is to get to it now. Like, fortunate to have a very understanding fiance who recognizes that I get some random thought, and I unfortunately have Google in my pants pocket. So I open it up and I'm on Google and I'm reading stuff, just because it's like, I have this random thought pop into my head. It's like, you're good with Google search terms and I mean, it doesn't even necessarily need to be PubMed the way that our field works with blog posts and all of that. It's like somebody's probably written a blog post about it. Somebody's probably cited something about it that you can dig into that citation about. Like, try to find the problems that you have within your program, see what else somebody else has done about it, and then start trying to apply it to your situation and what works. Because a lot of the differences between programs to me aren't necessarily in the principles, but they're in the logistics of the space that you have to work with. Like, it's, I'd almost be interested on, like, sometimes people present these programs, like, I wish they gave more context to what they have. Like, again, I've never worked with Cal, but finding out that all of his programs were done in the basement of Mariucci Arena, it was like, of course he had to do French contrast, because if there's nowhere to sprint that's soft, like, do you think those programs would be different if he had a 90-meter track outside of his weight room? Probably wouldn't need to lead on French contrast as much as he did, but he's working out of a shoebox. So he might have done that. I don't want to speak for him, but I'd imagine that there'd be a completely different thing based on that. Like, my programs at Carleton, I had a 90-meter track outside of the weight room. I didn't need to get fancy. I could just sprint the kids 12 months a year. It was a little bit cold. It was a garage type setup. It'd be 45 degrees, so it would warm up a little bit longer, but you could sprint all year round. You don't need to get super fancy with plyos or find something to fill that bucket in some other way. That you can just do the thing, which is nice.
Hell yeah. French, do you want to ask your inevitable?
Yeah, we can't let you go without asking the most important question. It's, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? No holds barred.
Well, if DC Comics are any indication, with Batman and Lex Luthor being really, really loaded is a superpower. So
Being super rich? That's not a bad one.
That's a modern day superpower, let's be honest.
For real, though.
Yeah. Let's be real. Let's just be a billionaire. You can just throw money at your problems and they all go away, and you can just disappear into the woodwork and never be seen again. Into the Batcave. Vigilante justice. Well, you mean I just got to put a mask on and I can just sock the shit out of somebody that's doing bad stuff? That sounds good. Maybe talk in a really deep voice and ask where Rachel is.
Where are they? Rachel.
No, I mean, there's so many problems that you could fix with just money. It is painful. It's just, like, invisibility would be neat too, but I don't even know what I'd do with that. Flying around, teleportation would be dope. I got a lot of friends around the country now that are way too spread out, and like driving to see them kind of sucks. Even being back in Minnesota, like 2.5 hours, or I just squint and I get to go somewhere else. That would be a pretty sweet deal.
You could solve that with money with a private jet.
There's that. See, right? Like, yeah. See, there's so many issues. Like, maybe every billionaire isn't actually greedy. They just wanted superpowers as a kid, and that's just how they managed to fall into it.
Clip that.
Wow. That's a one-liner right there. There's been a few of them on this one.
As always, before we finish, we always rank our drinks here. Alex, if you want, we'll go first. Kind of show you how it's done. We go off 4 categories. The flavor, obviously, you have to. The look of the can, the price you paid, and of course the ingredients. French, you want to take it first? I feel like it's without said and done that we've done the original White Monster, and we're both very avid fans. I think there's not a strength coach in the entire world who's not like, yeah, I love her. She's perfect. She can fix me.
Yeah, it's criminal if you don't pay homage to the OG, especially down here. Like, I got this bad boy for around $2, so pretty damn cheap. The taste is obviously iconic and classic. You know what you're gonna get. Got the classic monster formula, nothing fancy, but it's a consistent daily driver. You can have it in the morning. You can have it as a pick-me-up. The availability is widespread, as you can see from my context. Down here, I feel like it's it's tough to find something better than that down here. So I feel like it's damn near a DR perfect 10. But even in the States, this is cracking like high eights, low nines for me. I'm giving this like a 8-9 overall, like in the scheme of things, just because from reputation paved the way for so many other elite energy drinks. Yeah.
I love it. I was actually wrong. It's not 274. It's 270 while I'm looking at the can here. So 270 milligrams of caffeine. It's the same price as a regular Celsius for 4 extra ounces, 70 more milligrams of caffeine. I will say the can leaves a lot to be desired from like a look standpoint. When I hold a 16-ounce Celsius, I just think of the OG like Celsius Heat, where it had the citrulline in there too. Like those were almost a perfect energy drink, and they were what? They were like $2 a can. Like it is so hard to beat that. So I don't know if it's just my nostalgia, like playing into it, but I feel like there's still a little bit left to be desired with it. Obviously, green tea ingredients aren't terrible. I think they're better than the regular Celsius, and it's more so just, hey, here's a legit energy drink from this. Flavor tastes pretty good. It's like that, like dragon fruit kind of knockoff kiwi with some berry in there. Overall, though, just hanging on the Celsius hate train, I think I'm going to go like 6.3. It's solid. Don't get me wrong. And if there's a deal 2 for $4, I'm probably going to get 2 of them. But like 6.3, I'm not choosing this. If I got a lineup of great drinks and I got Monsters at the same deal, even if they are less calorie or less milligrams of caffeine, I think I'm going to go with the Monster. Same thing. Like honestly, the White Rockstar. We haven't done that one, but the White Rockstar is pretty good too. I think I might choose that over this, unless I just want to live in 2016 and hope for better.
So I had a warm frozen bombsicle C4. So,
The irony.
so the warmth plays into it. Like if this is that 3 a.m. back to the fridge can, I know this tastes better than this, but warm when you're drinking it warm. I think I got 18 of them for 18 at Costco. So price point, you can't beat it. That's why it's here. Flavor wise, warm, it does not hit quite as well. It's 200 milligrams of caffeine with like a dabbling amount of other pre-workout stuff in there. As far as hit goes, it never really hits me that strong, but I've also got a very high caffeine tolerance despite even winding things down. Overall, I'd go 7.5. Put it in the fridge. Probably gets up to like an 8.5. It's not a good daily driver by any means. It's just this is a target of opportunity for me, but gets the job done. Gets caffeinated. It's not, but it is the OG. You got to respect C4. Without C4, we don't have anything else pre-workout. Well, I guess if you want to go all the way back, there's some of the ultimate orange stuff, but as far as the starting to lift in 2005, 2006 era, it's the OG. You got to respect it. And carbonating it makes it way better. So solid 7.5.
Love it. Alex, where can anybody find you? Whether it be social media, in a PhD research article, where can they look you up?
Best place to find me is probably Instagram. I hardly post anything, but I do respond to DMs in the event that somebody wants to chat. It's just at Brodjeski. It's the one public profile. Twitter's quiet. I usually tweet once a year, and sometimes I tick off somebody with a book. Yeah, Instagram's the move. Just at Brodjeski. Hit me up there. Should be easy to find. There's only been 2 of me, and the other one is 6 feet under, unfortunately.
There can only be one. Highlander that. Definitely follow us on Instagram. That's bevbois.tv. Go to our website, bevbois.com. Grab some sick gear. If you guys love the Marlboro logo, we'll probably end up getting a cease and desist from them. And just like that, we did rip them off. But there's some sick gear on there. Subscribe to us on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, whatever you get your podcasts. Help us get to 100. When we get to 100, we're going to do a giveaway to some lucky, one of those fans, whether it be your mom that subscribed to us to help us get there, so you could win it and double your odds. It's all good. We don't care. We just need the numbers. You can find us at bszutkowski on Instagram, and French is
French_fit40.
And no matter what, thank you. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.